Kristin, welcome to the show. It is so good to have you on today. Delighted for the audience to get to know you and hear about all the cool things you're up to. And let's start how we always start the show. Would you give us a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. I just want to say, Jason, thanks a lot for inviting me onto your show. I'm really excited for you.
Yeah,
Thanks for the opportunity for me to just talk a little bit about what I do on a day-to-day basis. So excited.
yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Me too.
And so, what was your first question?
Oh, just let the audience know a little bit about yourself, who you are,
Okay,
where you're sitting right now, and we'll go
great.
from there.
Terrific. Well, I'm a therapist. I'm a psychologist, but I'm really like more a relationships therapist. I have an office in Hoboken, New Jersey, a couple mornings a week, and I work 3 to 4 days in New York City, actually in the financial district. I've been in practice for 16 years and received my doctorate in a medical college down in Philadelphia, actually Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. And when I did that, I was living outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, had a practice there for almost 10 years and was super, I wasn't as challenged as I'd like to be. And so I was somewhat bored. And so I decided to pack up and move to New York City in late 2012. And
Yeah,
over the years of being in practice, when you first start off, you're really pretty much seeing everybody. And over the years, um, now I'm just really focusing on relationships, marriage before, during, and after, of course, co-parenting, dating, how to improve your relationships. I really just focusing on those types of things now in my practice and find it to be rewarding.
yeah. Is there any better place in the world to practice relationship therapy than downtown Manhattan?
Probably not.
like you would be a call. You have a lot of high stress, high wealth,
Yeah.
family dynamic type people surrounding you at all times here in New York City overall, but especially down in the financial district. So I'm guessing that you're no longer bored, like maybe you were for your practice somewhere else.
Right.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Not at all. I'm busy. That's good.
Busy is good. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Mhm.
So Kristen and I know each other. We both work I work as a coach and Kristen works as a therapist. So we met through mutual self-development interests and mental health interests. So that's how we know each other. And Kristen, now we're going to go into one of my favorite parts of the show, and we get to give each other our first impressions of each other. And you and I have not talked about this, so this will be fun. And surprise, you get to go first because it's my show.
Oh, great. so, my first impression of you was that uh, driven and motivated, and really wanted to do something different and better with your life, and was really want to take the necessary steps, and you just really had this way about thinking about your life as to where you were and really where you want to be, and super focused on that. And so I think that you know, um, really I could really relate to that. And it's a lot of the clientele that I work with. And so I think that really resonated with me when I first met you.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you. I'd say that's
Hmm.
all. That's all very accurate. So
Uh-huh.
my first impression of you, and I know we met over a Zoom meeting, so it was our first impressions of each other were not live. We've since met live, but at the time it was on a Zoom meeting, which you get a good flavor for somebody. First of all, like I'd say you come across as very intelligent, but also like intelligent, but a very relatable and very real with a good sense of humor. I think like for me, when I picture therapy, I think a lot. I think, and I don't know, this is how I think about it. It feels very heavy, and
Mhm.
just like you're not a heavy person. Like you obviously have the chops of the therapy, and I'm sure you go into all sorts of things with your clients, but you're not somebody who comes across as extremely serious. And I mean that the best way possible. It's like, this is somebody who's really smart, who knows their stuff, but also knows how to have fun. So that was my
Well,
first impression of you.
I appreciate that. That's nice to hear. I mean, I think that one of the things as a therapist, when we work with clients, is that we want to be able to be relatable. We want them to feel that the people, the clients, that we can see their point of view, and that we are approachable, and that we're not this standoffish, always, how do you feel? And that's all we really say. I mean, I certainly wouldn't describe myself as that type of therapist. So I appreciate that feedback for sure. Thank you. It's
Yeah.
great.
Well, yeah. I always relate. New Jersey therapist. I'm sure you've heard this 100 times. I always relate you to Dr. Melfi on The Sopranos.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the
Right.
famous
Yeah,
Lorraine
yes.
Bracco's
Sure.
character. Tony's
Sure.
therapist. That's like, yeah, where they had some interesting interactions.
They did.
If you ever watch The Sopranos.
Oh, all seasons.
Yeah. Well, very
Yes.
cool. Let's get into it today. I'm really excited to share my experience with you, with the audience, and
Sure.
everybody learn more about you. And what's really cool about this show is I get to learn a lot about you too, because we're going to go through some topics and questions that I don't really know. I don't have any idea how you're going to answer them. So I'm really excited for myself, selfishly for myself. And then when this goes up live to the world, they all get to hear it as well. So let's get into it. So
Okay.
first question
Mm-hmm.
is, Kristin, what's something that you nerd out about?
When I got that question, only a nerd asks those types of questions. But that being you,
Only a what?
a nerd would ask if
I'm sorry. What's something that you really like doing? Or yeah, I like that. Only a nerd would ask what you nerd out about. That's amazing.
Well,
Thank you.
the interesting thing about that is when I saw that question, I was thinking about it and I thought the first thing that came to my mind was my husband, who's a total nerd. And he's in IT and, he likes Star Trek, and he'd probably kill me for sharing that. But, so I think when I saw that question, I was like, well, yeah, I mean, I always find their conversations fascinating because, of course, you can recite every Star Trek episode. And so I find that kind of stuff totally fascinating. But I think the one thing that maybe I'm passionate about, or that I'm really I spend a lot of energy on, I think, is not just helping other people, but what am I doing for myself, right? How am I continuing to raise the bar for myself and expect more from myself, through my
Mhm.
and I think that in helping myself, I think that I'm better able to help other people, and so I think that through our conversation today, maybe that will take on like a little bit of a better or more about flavor as I share a little bit more about my experiences and where I'm at in my life and what I got my hands on right now.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to expand upon that a little bit, can you give us a specific example of something that you do to improve yourself?
I think that I at times will challenge the status quo. I think it's easy to, when you're in private practice, to be like your own island, and you're by yourself, because I'm only one person. I don't really have anybody that I work directly with or under me or anything like that. You can kind of get closed in on that, and you can think you have all the answers, and just because you're just doing your own gig. But I think that just always expanding my mind, or talking to colleagues, or reaching out to other people, or questioning maybe why I framed a question the way that I did, or how I approach
hmm
people, or how can I approach them differently and better? How can I be like a better therapist?
hmm
Just showing up a little bit differently and better each time.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. I mean,
Yeah,
it's just like coaching, right? Like that's a never ending journey. You can always be better. And it's also um, it's different for each client too, right? Because you've got to deal with each of your clients as individuals, and trying to be the same. You bring the intelligence and the learning to each of your clients, but then you have to treat each of your clients as an individual human being. And what may
sure.
work great for one client may be completely falling on deaf ears for another one. So yeah, that's what I love about this work, is it's a lifelong journey, and you're never going to be the master or or perfect at it. There's always something to strive for. So I think for people like you and I that are self-development, like I'm a self-development junkie too, like it's fun to be in a profession where you're like, oh, like what's the next, how do I improve myself every day and every session?
Right,
Like 1%. And there's always room to do that. So that's super cool.
right, and it's not just I mean, it's not just profession; it's also personally. So I work with a lot of couples, and being married, when you're helping other couples, it's common to also think about your relationship, and how are you showing? How am I showing up in my marriage, and how am I communicating better, and what am I doing to kind of raise the bar for my marriage and for myself individually in within the context of that marriage.
Yeah. The question for you about marriage and therapy.
Sure.
Would you advise your clients to go into a podcast and call their significant other a nerd?
Well. The fun thing about that, he knows he is. He jokes
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
I got got my calculator, my pocket pencils, and I got my Star Trek drawings, and I'm like, okay, that's all good, right? So
Yeah.
we have a lot of fun with it, sure.
Yeah. Well, and you married him, so I'm sure
Right.
so it all worked out great in the end. Well,
Yep.
cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So, next thing wondering about is what's something that is inside of your comfort zone that is likely outside of somebody else's comfort zone?
I think I think one of the things that really resonates with me is inside my comfort zone is the value of being honest, and oftentimes that's uncomfortable for people to really embrace being honest with themselves and with their partner or their spouse. And so, in my individual and my couples work, I think that learn how to articulate how you feel about something in a kind and compassionate way, but yet an honest way, is very challenging for people because they don't really always have the skills to say things how they want to say things in appropriate ways, but they just really want to come out and say it. But I think that
Hmm.
one the biggest challenges in relationships is just to be honest really about anything, right? And I think that because couples are all different, some couples and some relationships don't really have the emotional bandwidth or the emotional safety, I should say, for people to be honest. And so that's always a
Hmm.
so helping people move into that and like the purpose of being honest and how that affects their life both individually and within a couple if that's where they are in their life.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's curious with your clients where you see like, and I've discussed in the show before. I'm married as well, where honesty and it's when it's not in a safe space can be very challenging. And I think there's also an element of what you said. It's to me the easier way out is to not always be completely honest because it's less confrontational.
Mhm.
So I'm curious how you work with your clients, or and maybe this is just for your own marriage or how you operate. How do you balance the um, your honesty with not coming across as confrontational, or like I also think there's a challenge. I see this a lot in coaching with like, oh, I just want to be honest with you, and what they're actually saying is like, I want to tell you what I think, or I want to give you my opinion, which actually
Mhm.
isn't a fact. Or and it's okay being feeling things and opinions are being honest with people, but how do you balance that where like I guess what I'm asking for is how do you give um in a conversation where you want to be honest, how do you do it from a place that's empowered and not from a place that's going to maybe set the other person back on their heels?
I think that's a great question. I think it's a very dicey at times, and it certainly can be challenging. But I think that if you and this is by no means perfect. I'm not saying that honest in every single thing. Do you like this dress on me or something like that? I think there's a way even to frame that answer. But I think for the more involved conversation about being honest, I think that when you approach it first with a soft startup, right? Can we talk about something? If you come from a place of, I want to share some of the things I'm feeling, this might be a challenging thing for us to talk about. I feel that I really want to be honest and talk about my feelings. I think that maybe we could benefit from this, whatever the conversation is going to be, or maybe this would help me.
Hmm.
I think you come across as being kind and compassionate, and I don't think you have to be confrontational. I think there's a
Hmm.
difference being confrontational, being assertive, and using your voice. I think that my experience has been that as soon as someone wants to share something or they with somebody, the first thing they think of is, I'm not a confrontational person. And I have to say to them, well, that's good, right? I think that being assertive and using your voice in a way that's positive and kind and respectful is very
Hmm.
different than being confrontational. Because when we think
Yeah.
of right? We think someone's like in our face and being confrontative and somewhat aggressive. And that's not really how to communicate how you feel. I mean, the goal would be to create like I just said, an emotional safety within the relationship so that there's this thing of can we be honest? When you're honest with somebody, I'm sure, I mean, it hurts, right? But you can lessen the hurt
Yeah.
by how you frame it, right? And what you say to that person. So you're not going to go in with a mindset of, oh, okay, being honest, I'm not going to hurt this person because they're going to be hurt. But if you have an opportunity where there's like an exploratory conversation or a conversation where you're just sharing openly how you feel about something, and you're giving the other person the opportunity to share how they feel as well, then
Mm-hmm.
there's a greater likelihood, right, that that conversation will go better than one that's just on your terms, on your timeline, using your language, that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
That all makes sense. Yeah. So now we're going to look at the reverse of this question for you.
Mhm.
So what's something that's outside of Kristin's comfort zone that might be inside of somebody else's?
Um, I thought about this question, and um, a couple things came to my mind, but I was just thinking about. I'm not going to talk about both of them, but I think that one of the things, the reason why I'm going to choose this answer is because it's somewhat of a little prelude into some of the other questions or another
Hmm.
question that you wanted me to answer,
Sure.
was that I'm a survivor of domestic violence, and
Hmm.
I left a marriage several years ago, and it took me a very long time, years actually, to come full circle. And I'm not even sure if I've even come full circle with sharing that part of my life with people. I mean, I wrote about it a few years ago, and which was a very raw and vulnerable experience for me.
Hmm.
And even writing it then really didn't bring me full circle. So when I when I share some of the history with friends, and if appropriate, and only when appropriate, with clients in a similar situation,
Hmm.
it still leaves me feeling uncomfortable. But on the flip side of that, people that I've shared that with, that I work with, they find it very relatable. And so I have
Hmm.
to balance that between sharing but not oversharing, and using my experience to help another person exit a similar situation,
Hmm.
and 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 recognizing like the benefit of that. And so I still, um, even as I'm speaking about it now, I'm sure you can tell that I still have, I still am at times reluctant or maybe uncomfortable sharing that part of my life with people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. When you do decide, and first of all, I want to thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable.
Thank you.
So it means a lot that you would do that for myself and for the audience here. I'm just curious about that and the work that you do as a therapist. And when you run into you're either doing couples therapy, or uh, you're working with one of the people in the marriage, and this same situation arises. Is it hard as a therapist to, like, I know you're trained to do this, but is it still hard to separate yourself from feeling the feelings that they're feelings, and just be a, you know, step away? Like how does that interaction happen if, like, somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I want to tell you that I'm suffering from domestic abuse." Well, first of all, I think you're required to report that by law, aren't you? Or am
Um,
I misunderstanding how that works?
you mean like a physical? I'm not required. I
Yeah,
mean that, or like a child abuse. I mean, when someone is in physical danger, you encourage them as much as you can, to
yeah,
shelter, and you provide the resources for them. Um, I mean, I'm only mandated. Obviously, if a client comes to he or she's suicidal or homicidal, then I have to do that. If there's a
got
case
it. Okay.
which is not secondhand, I'm required. But when someone
Yeah,
comes
that's
to
what
me,
that's what I'm sorry, I'm confusing. The mandated
yeah,
reporter is for
yeah, yeah,
minors and like bodily harm. Like, okay, got it. Sorry,
yeah,
I was confusing something there.
and right, and elder abuse. But when someone comes to me, sure. I mean, I think that I wouldn't be human if I wasn't somewhat a little bit triggered by that. And but my goal in helping someone in that same situation um, is to provide a sense of safety within the context of the therapy room, and to help them suss out what they want to do, and what the degree is, and what kind of resources they have. And if appropriate, after I form a relationship with them, a therapeutic relationship with them, if it's appropriate, and I've only done this a few times, is to share my experiences, so that they see that there's somebody on the other side, that's got out of that type of situation.
Hmm.
Because every situation is different, and some women do not have the resources, support, financial, otherwise, to exit
Hmm.
those situations. And so those types of times, you have to think about, what is in the best, how can I best help this person? You just can't tell them, nor would I, get up and leave. But I mean, there's an element of safety,
Sure.
concern, sure, that you really have to talk about.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it sounds very challenging, a
Yeah,
challenging place to be, but
right.
yeah, I want to thank you again for sharing that. That's it's an important topic that we haven't talked about on the show before, and yeah, just thank you for sharing that. So,
Yeah, and it's and on a sidebar, and even in conversations with other colleagues, other people that I don't see as clients. I mean, it's you would be surprised the stories that people share, and how random it is.
yeah, that's
You know,
terrible.
the emotional and the psychological and the mental and the physical abuse.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing we have people like you in the world who are there to provide support and provide resources as needed. So,
I
thank you for doing the work you do.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Also, a good example in you get asked sometimes as a coach, like, "Hey, where do you draw the line between therapy and coaching?" That's a good
Hmm.
example. If somebody comes to me as a client, and this has never happened to me, but if somebody was to come and say, "Hey, I think I'm doing this," stop the session and say, like, "This is a therapeutic conversation.
Hmm.
Do you have the?" And like I would do the same thing. Like, I've got a list of therapists you can talk to, or do you know somebody, or do you have a therapist? Like, that's not a coaching question, not a coaching conversation at all. I'm not trained for that. So,
Right. Yeah. And the reason why I shared that was because in thinking about our podcast today and the other questions that you want, that you discussed with all the people that come on your show, is that
mhm,
that was one I had one that was one of the most profound um, um, changes in my life. Like once I left, that 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 made me pivot in my life in significant and substantial ways. I mean, it was a game changer when I left, and so it was very empowering for me to leave. And so I really want to leave on that note that even though it was a horrendous situation, the day that I walked out while he was at work was it changed my life, it changed the direction of my life substantially.
mhm,
Yeah,
yeah,
it
yeah,
was a it was that was my that was that was the beginning of this huge journey which gave me this great silver lining in my life. And so I really wanted to share that.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
cool. And here
Hmm.
we are today.
Here
So,
we hey, talking on your
yeah,
podcast. I
talking
was
on the podcast today. That's great.
Mhm.
Let's so uh, yeah, I'm really curious now what you're gonna have to say about this because I feel like it may be related. I want to give you a scenario that you've got 5 minutes and you get to give the speech to the world, right? So you get the world stage
Yeah.
and we get to tune in and see it's live streaming, it's on Facebook Live. Some of us get to be there in
Hi.
person. You get to speak to all of us, I think 7 billion of us now. And they have translators so everybody can understand you. Let's put that caveat in as well.
Wow.
Yeah,
My,
it's a super cool kind of science fiction type thing. Your husband would love it.
Mhm.
What would you give your speech on and why?
I would give my 5 minute speech on the essence of time. I think that time is this construct that we've created, and I think that um, we're always looking for more time. We wish we had more time. We talk about how we're going to manage our time, what our time is, and we talk about what our time means and how we want to spend our time, how we don't want to spend our time. And if you talk with people, they're what do they always say? I just wish I had more time. Like, what is time?
Hmm.
Like, time is this thing, right? I think about my life. I live my life in 50-minute or 60-minute increments. That makes up my day. And then, I have my weekend time and a time to commute. And so I think that, excuse me, I think that time is this fascinating construct that we have built, we've created, right, in our mind. We get these 24 hours in a day. And what do we want to do with this time? And how important is this word, right? How much value does this word carry for us, and how much we um, think about it, right? I mean, think about the word time,
Hmm.
right? What am I going to do today? How much time do I have? Oh, I got to do my podcast. How much time is that? How much
Hmm.
time I have when I get done with this, right? I mean, I just think that the construct that we've created, the idea of time and everything around it is a fascinating subject.
Yeah, I'm over here smiling because like the irony of a person who literally like your job literally consists of scheduling people within very specific time constraints. Like you get paid, like you likely get paid by the hour and you run your business by the hour or by the session if your sessions are 50 minutes or an hour. It's such a cool answer for somebody who actually is like time is their business. Unlike, like working in sales as I did for 20 years before, going out on my own, unless you have an actual meeting on the calendar, the day is kind of yours to do what you want, right? Like
Right?
I can make
What
phone
do you
calls, I can work on emails, but your job literally consists of my clients coming in at 10 a.m. I'm meeting with them from 10 to 10:50. I have another client at 11 to 11:50. So I think that's a super cool and unexpected answer from you on
Mm.
what you're passionate about. Which this is a good example. Where like, oh, well, I learned something new about you. I never would have guessed. I think that's super cool. I I have to relate it because this is just my nerdiness. One thing I nerd out about is Curb Your Enthusiasm and Larry David. Like he's my all-time
Oh yeah.
hero. I can't remember. Do you watch the show?
No, I've watched it a couple times, but I know of him for sure.
Yeah, there's an episode. I think it was from last season actually, where he's Bryan Cranston is his therapist,
Oh
and
wow. Okay.
they have a whole amazingly. I'll send you a clip of the show. It's hilarious. They have this amazing like thing that's going on, and they, in typical Larry David fashion, they end up talking about like the most like banal stuff, and then like literally when the clock like strikes, I think whenever the hour's up, Bryan Cranston therapist is like, all right, that's all we have time for today. Like immediately, no matter where Larry's at in like the work for the week, it's just hilarious. Like anal on like Bryan Cranston's character's like time, like that's it. He's like, that's it.
Right.
Oh, and he like leaves him hanging on something. I forget what it was, but it was hilarious because it's like he just played like
Right.
this super dry. He played the opposite of you, right? You're describing like trying to be humane and
Mm.
like relatable to people. Bryan Cranston's like the lean back in his leather chair, legs crossed, like fingers on his chin, and then as soon as the time up, he's like, "Time's up." Hilarious, so good.
The other thing, the funny thing about, and segueing on that, there are a couple of things that I think about that. So, professionally, I have clocks in my office. I have one that I can see, one that my clients can see. So I'm always like,
Hmm.
so minutes. And so in the last 5 minutes, because it's all about time, I'm going to start to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Now, segueing on to what you just said about Curb Your Enthusiasm, there's this really funny video clip of uh, um, Bob Newhart, the Bob Newhart show,
Hmm.
and this is way before you, but and he's
Yeah, I
he's
know
a
Bob Newhart. Yeah.
okay, so the psychiatrist, he's a psychiatrist. This woman comes in, and she sits down. She said, you have 5 minutes. So she starts to talk, and well, I have this problem with OCD. Stop it. And then she starts talking about something else, and everything she says, all he says is stop it. And then and then at the end, after 5 minutes, she says, "Okay, your time is up." You know what I mean? So it's just funny, the whole thing, how we view time, right, and what we do with it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is just to wrap on this, annoying pop culture thing that I'm sure the audience is loving, but I'm going to do it anyway because again, it's my show. There's an episode of the Chappelle Show where he's got the wrap it up button, and it's like the Oscar walk off music. Where if you're talking to somebody and they're just going on, you can like press the button and it plays the Oscar when like the people are giving speeches and they're like time to move on. They start playing the music over when they're speaking. So maybe you could get that as well. You could have like a button you press, and as people are wrapping up the session, you could like be like, "All right, sounds great, time to wrap it up," and give them the music. I would pay for that. That would be actually hilarious. That would be really hilarious.
Yeah, because it's that is funny, because then for people, and it's time is just, it's crazy, right? It's just
Yeah.
we never
Yeah.
have enough.
Very
of that.
cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So this is the part of the show where you get to share your journey today. So, what we learned about you today is, you're currently married to somebody who loves Star Trek, which is super cool. You were previously married. We know you're a therapist. We know you have an office in Hoboken. You also work downtown. You live in New Jersey. So Yeah, and then you also obviously have a PhD. Yeah, well, what else would you like to share with us about your journey to, what led us to being here on the podcast today with you?
Um, I just think about my life, and I just think I really haven't taken a traditional approach to life. I mean, I went and got my undergrad, and then I, between my undergrad and my graduate, I got a graduate degree at Penn State, but then I also got a black belt, a second degree black belt. And then after I got done my master's degree, I decided to open up a coffee house, and I did that for a couple of years.
Wait, I have to pause you for a minute. I never knew this about you. Where did you get your undergrad from?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll talk slower. So I got my undergrad at SUNY Empire
Okay.
State at Toga, and then I along my journey, I trained in martial arts for several years and got a black belt there, and
Wow.
I went and I got a graduate degree at Penn State Capitol Campus. I was living in Harrisburg and
Mm-hmm.
finished there. And then I decided to open up a coffee house. And so I did that for a couple of years. That wasn't successful for a few reasons. And so then
Mm-hmm.
after I closed that, I decided to go back in mental health, and I worked for like the children's services. And then I eventually applied to graduate school. So I did a master's and a doctorate at that same college in Philadelphia.
Mm.
And that took me about 9 years. And then I was practicing in Pennsylvania, and then I moved to New York City. And then I opened a
Mm-hmm.
practice in 2012 for several years. Took about a year off about in 2017. And then I reopened my practice in Hoboken and financial district. And I did that because I was approached. What happened was in September of 2017, I was approached by a guy and his couple, two brainiacs, approached me and wanted to know if I would become part of their startup. And how they found me was the
Mm.
woman is a data scientist, data scientist, and they had like this huge algorithm, and they put in all this information, right? So they did put all this information to an algorithm, and they came up with like 200 psychologists, and then they kept feeding the algorithm, making it smarter. Then they come up with four psychologists, and then they approached four of those psychologists to see if they'd be part of their startup, and I was the one of the four, and the
Oh,
one that said,
wow.
yeah. And
That is
so,
cool. That's
yeah,
really
it's so
cool.
so very cool. They're brilliant, and now I'm part of an amazing team. They've been working on this startup, which I can talk about it for a few minutes. For
Yeah.
4 years. For 4 years, we have a team. Um, our UE, the user experience person, she's brilliant. She is out in California. We have someone who does digital marketing. We have a coder out in India. We have myself, who's the chief content officer, which is I'm in charge of all the website content, all that information on the
Mm-hmm.
website. We have a CEO and his wife. They're the original co-founders, and she's a data scientist. And then we have a chief behavioral specialist who is a professor at Cornell. He's got a PhD in English and a PhD in psychology, and he runs all the behavioral stuff of our app. And
He's got a
so,
double
yeah,
doctorate.
yeah, double doctorate,
Oh, wow. That's just giving me a headache just thinking about.
right? Which is brilliant. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
can imagine.
yeah. And so anyway, my journey, I mean, I had really had no idea. And the reason why after I took my year off from my practice and I closed just to take a breather and to reevaluate what I wanted to do with my life, I went back into practice because I felt if I'm going to be part of this startup, I had to be in front of people, right? Because being in front of people gives me my clinical skills and gives me the clinical repertoire that I'm going to need, right, to really become an important piece of the website. And so I started in Hoboken part-time, and then I was doing that part-time a few mornings a week, and I think I'm ready to go back into the city. And then when I decided to come back into the city to do work, I decided to come down into financial district. And 2.5 years later, we're getting ready to launch our Kickstarter. Well, 4 years later for them, and 2.5 years later for me. We're going to be running. We're going to be running our Kickstarter in probably sometime in January. Now, another interesting piece of that is that on a whim, the two original co-founders, Saurav and his wife, they were like on YouTube watching something, and this commercial came up for Inventure X. And Inventure X, I don't know, but Kevin Harrington, who started Shark Tank, he runs Inventure X. I'm sure you know that. And and they just happened to reach out to him, said, "Hey, would you be interested in?" Because they pick up 4 startups a month, and lo and behold, they picked us up, and they've been doing our digital marketing campaign for a couple of months, I think, and then they'll move into our Kickstarter in January. So that's really exciting. Like, I can't believe this is happening type of moment. Yeah, it's really fast. It's fascinating.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and now it's kind of kicked into high gear. We're ready to launch our website. We've done some intro videos. We're hoping to launch our app, I think maybe sometime in February, March. I'm not sure, but definitely Kickstarter in January. And this has been an exciting piece of my life that, takes up a lot of time now, but very, very excited about it. And it's wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I think you and I have talked a little bit. I also have a passion for startups. Like I much prefer working at startups. So I'm really happy for you. That's super cool. I had a couple questions for you on this, since we haven't really talked too much about this. So the first, Kevin Harrington thing is it his venture fund that's taking an interest, and they take a do they provide funding, or is it more like, hey, they believe in what you're doing from I guess not just the financial part, but like they believe in the mission of the company, and that's why they're getting involved? Is that what the
right?
That's cool.
Right. So basically, they don't. My understanding, of course, don't call me this, but my understanding, they don't make an investment in you. They financially, they make an investment in you because they really believe in your product, and they and however their structure is set up. I'm not really sure. I mean, I'm not part of that, but or how much I'm going to say, but they are really interested in the product, and so what they do is they will take on your product, and then they will help market it so that they get you ready for Kickstarter, right? So then whatever they do behind the scenes as far as advertising or marketing and so forth, because the original co-founders, they fund the whole thing. They're funding the whole setup. We don't have anybody in any investors yet because we want it that way.
Yeah, so you're bootstrapped right now.
Yeah, and so basically, they're funding it. We're funding it ourselves, and then at some point, I'm sure we'll go towards invest. But at this time, we're not doing that.
Yeah, it's amazing. So who's the and if you can't share because it's not a completely public thing yet, I'm just curious, who's your target user? Like, who's the ideal person you want to find? And it's if I'm not mistaken, it's an app. It's going to be an app on the App Store, right?
Right. So basically, it's an AI powered emotional wellness app. It's basically AI driven, and it's a emotional wellness app. Is pretty much like your app for life. And so we look at like your values and your choices and your goals, and then we give you a unique like psychological portrait, and then we help you through life changes, through certain helping you to we ask you to do certain exercises that are really specific to you. We give you a toolbox, all different types of tools to use. It's also going to be community based, where you're going to have other community members where you live, and you can kind of chime in with them. And then basically, we kind of meet you where you are, and it's it's gonna be like through a selfie, and then how you are feeling emotionally, and then the more information that you put in, the more exercises you do, and so forth, and the more tools that you use, and of course, the smarter it becomes to help you even more. So it's a very specific AI-driven emotional wellness app that helps each person individually. So, for example, if you have like a mindfulness app, right? People go on mindfulness apps, but they don't always work for everybody. So, but mindfulness might be one tool that we're going to give you. Maybe CBT, kind of behavioral therapy, might be another tool. Maybe yoga might be another tool. Another part of our app is that on our website, we're going to have all different types of blogs and vlogs, which are video blogs. We're going to have webinars that are going to cater towards all these different types of challenges you have in your life. So we look at 3 categories: rebounds, for example, experiencing heartbreak or loss or the death of a parent or bereavement. Transition, for example, getting a new job, your first job, becoming a parent for the first time. And enhancement, wanting to feel less lonely, improve your self-confidence and self-esteem. And so those 3 modules we're going to start off with, and we're going to have all different types of ways into whichever direction you choose, right? Whether that be, rebounds, transition, or enhancement. But there's going to be lots of different categories within those 3 major categories, if that makes sense.
So, Kristin, do you see but first of all, this sounds really cool. And I don't personally know of anything in this space like this. I know there's like meditation apps and there's mindfulness apps and, like a Headspace, like the therapy on demand kind of stuff with our friend, Michael Phelps. I see him on the subway all the time, in those ads. But I'm curious, do you see this product as, or the company as a replacement for a therapist, or more as something that somebody would want to use when they're considering that they maybe want to work with a therapist? Or would, and you as a therapist yourself, would you see this as we meet weekly and then in between our sessions, there's this really cool group of resources that you could use? Like, where do you see this fitting into the marketplace, into the mental health marketplace?
Well, actually, that is a really a perfect and great question, because it's not mental health. I mean, it's an emotional wellness AI driven app, and it's a clear distinction between. It is not a mental health app, meaning that we're not therapists on there, and there's not going to ever be therapists on there.
Right.
This is that we have to really suss out, because when people think of like emotional wellness, they're like, oh, so it's like there's new therapy on there. It's like, well, no. Will there be suggestions for like cognitive behavioral therapy, how to change your thoughts and that type of thing? Yes, but it is not going to be a platform where therapists join, where you're getting therapy. That is a totally separate, different thing. If someone comes on, for example, and maybe they need some extra help and that type of thing, we might, as we build out our platform, we build out a community base and we build out other resources, and there'll be other resources there for someone. But it's important that there's a distinction, that this is just an emotional wellness. Like, it's about, how you're going to navigate the ups and downs of life, with your different experiences and going through different challenges, like I mentioned before. And then we're going to help you do that, which is, and a very, very specific and a specific app towards each person based on, say, they're feeling, and then if they're feeling a certain way, then how we're going to, what other questions are we going to ask them, where we're going to drive, if they're like thinking about, say, rebound, and they're going through a heartbreak, then after their selfies, then kind of directing them as to how they're going to heal faster through that heartbreak by doing different tools and having, access to real-time help and so forth.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking for my own coaching practice, this is something I will definitely recommend to my clients. And I think that's a really cool way to, like, and like, of course, therapy and coaching are not the same thing, but you have a powerful session with a client and they're really gung-ho about something that you worked on, or they're working on something, and then, they run into something that either sets them back or they're feeling a certain way. It's like, it's cool to have that kind of like on-demand thing. Like, I'm excited to use it for myself. I think it sounds amazing. I can't see it. And I'm a techie, AI startup app guy anyway, and I'm in the mental health space. So this is perfect for me. So I guess what I'm saying is, can you give me a beta code soon? I would love to play with it.
I think, I think we're doing that in, maybe after a Kickstarter. I'm not really sure about when we're doing the beta. I'm not. I don't know if it's now. I'm not really sure.
Sure. I am not kidding about being in the beta. I'm kidding about needing any sort of time. But I would love to check it out. I would love to check it out. It sounds
it's
really
so
cool.
interesting. I've never been part of a team like this before. And so when I came on, after people had already been on the team, it's really trying to assimilate everybody's expertise and where my role
Hmm.
is over the years. My role has evolved into now, heading all of the content.
Yeah.
And so you get really focused in on all the blogs I have to write and who I'm going to hire and all the vlogs on the videos and what the videos are going to be about, how I'm going to help people. Because on there, I'm not really, I mean, sure, I'm, Dr. D coming in, but I'm not that person with Illumu. That's the name of the
Wait,
app. It's Illumu.
did you just say Dr. D?
Yeah, that's why I go by Dr. D
That's a
sometimes.
bit, that's such a, that's also like such a, like startup thing. It's like, yo, Dr. D's here to give us some content today. You're like, you're like, I'm Dr. Davin out in the real world. In my startup, I'm Dr. D. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, so I think so when I get those questions, I'm thinking, okay, because there's so much information, right? You're part of a team and you're trying to remember all these different things, and everyone's got their piece of the pie,
Yeah.
and trying to just keep up with my share, right? Which is
Yeah.
right now pretty enormous. The responsibility right now just to get content up, and yeah, it's been
That's really cool.
yeah, it's fun, it's exciting, and it's fun, and you just have to, to your point, when you get involved in these projects like this podcast for you, you have to be very internally motivated, right? It's just like
Yeah.
intrinsically, this is what you want to do. No one has to ask you to do those things. You just do those things. It's where you
Yeah.
find your joy, where you find your happiness, where you have fun in your life, and that's what it's about, to kind of balance, the day-to-day stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm really excited for you. I'm excited.
Thank you.
I'm excited when this comes out. You can consider me a customer
Oh,
user when
thank
it comes out. I have an iPhone, so I'm assuming it's coming out for both Apple and Android devices would be my
you.
guess. And then
Yes.
you said,
Yep.
you said you also have a web component as well. I also
Yep.
use a computer, so I'll be a perfect person for you to be a customer. So I'm
Okay.
really excited. And
Thank you.
yeah, and as we in the show notes, what we can share about this when your episode comes out, I will be sure and have the links to all these things as
Oh,
well.
I
So
appreciate that.
yeah,
Really
so
do.
of course, for the audience wants to know more or download it or try it or purchase or whatever your business model is going to be there. Really, really cool. It sounds very unique as well, and I think the artificial intelligence part of it seems, I'm very fascinated by some cool. It's really cool to see like a product that, as you get more users on and you get more data, is going to iterate itself through artificial
Oh, sure.
intelligence to be better
Sure.
for me as a
Yeah.
user.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then,
Now
and yeah. And
that's
it gets
great.
better for every user, right? Because the
That's
more
right.
information, more data you put in there, the smarter it gets.
Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
technology and Larry David are two things that I nerd out about. So
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Well, so you shared a lot today, and I wanted to ask you next something a little more introspective.
Sure.
What's the thing that you're most proud of?
I think that the thing that I'm most proud of, I think that I think that the pivot in my life, when I go back to the bad marriage that I was in, I think that what I'm most proud of is that when I reflect back, is just the grit that I had to leave, because I was in my um, second or third year of my doctorate, and when I left, I just never skipped a beat, right? I just never stopped. I refused to give my energy to anything. I refused to give up on any of that, right? And so it never I just never stopped. I lived somewhere in a safe place for like 4 months, and then I got my own apartment, and I just kept
Hmm.
going to school, and I kept working, and I just continued my education. I think that the reason why I'm proud of that the most is because what it took for me to leave and to stay in school,
Hmm.
and it really set the tone for the next 15 years of my life,
Yeah.
right? And so that
Yeah.
demonstrates, what I'm able to do. And then I think that is the thing. And then the other thing maybe is that when I decided to leave Pennsylvania and I just moved to New York City, my only person I knew was my brother and his
Hmm.
wife, Westchester. And I just rented my house, sold some furniture, sold my furniture, gave a lot of stuff away, and then I just moved.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Like there's many trailblazers, there's many people that do the same thing I've done. And I mean, the city is wrought with transplants, right? I mean,
yeah,
and we all have a story, and we all come from different backgrounds. And I think that, people that would know me today would never think that I was that person all those years ago, and that I left that kind of situation.
hmm
But it just goes to show you that people have a lot more perseverance and grit than they think they do, and that
yeah,
they're capable of achieving many, many, many things. Right?
yeah. Oh,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I'm that.
I think you actually preemptively answered the question I was going to ask you, and it was going to be, and if there's something else to add here, I was just going to ask you if there's somebody out there listening today that's in a similar situation to what you were in that you were discussing. What would you want to tell them? Like, if you were there in front of you, what would you say to them? Not as a therapist, but as somebody human to human, somebody
Mhm.
who's gone through this and is here in the podcast today. What would you say to them?
I think that's a great question. I think that I would tell them to build a tribe, get some support around them. And as someone who's gone through that, I would say that you can look at this as a problem or you have to find, and that I would also ask them to look at other areas of their life that maybe they've been challenged, that they've been able to overcome, and can they use some of the strengths that they already have that maybe they don't know that they have, because oftentimes when you're in those situations, your self-esteem and how you feel about yourself is so diminished. But I think that if you take a moment and to dig down deep and and think about how you can remove yourself from that situation or what you need to do, I think that people can really do wonders for their life, right? If they really want to make a change like that, right? They have to,
Yeah,
even if they have to go down and get more support or do something, or live in a way that they're comfortable in the beginning, meaning go somewhere, stay somewhere. That's not ideal, but it gets them to their end goal of living a different kind of life.
yeah. Next question for you:
Sure.
what's something that you are afraid might
Oh,
actually be true about you?
um, that's a good question.
I love this
Um,
question.
yeah.
my
Um,
my my guests don't love the question, but I love the question.
yeah. Right. Well, you're the host, so
I'm
so
the
so
host. I'm the boss. Kind of,
right.
not really,
And
but
then I'm the therapist. I get to ask the question. So
that's.
when I
I know the tables have turned. This is great.
yeah, yeah. Probably that I'm a little more stubborn than I like to let on, that I like to accept. I
What's your
think that
husband's name?
Rob,
Hey Rob, if you're listening, we'd love if you'd write in or come on sometime and tell us whether that's true or not.
he, I know my husband, and he probably say it is. I
Yeah,
think that, you know, I'm not I'm not a kind of person who's got to be right. I think that I feel that I have the better ideas, so sometimes I'm probably, you know, a little more stubborn.
yeah,
Uh, and I think that I would say no. I don't really. No, I think I'm open minded about A, B, or C, but I'm talking personally. But
yeah.
probably a little bit more stubborn than I you know that I like to admit to.
Mhm. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Yeah. So
hmm
your favorite saying is if I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. It's
yeah.
a very very empowering place,
Oh,
and
I like it.
yeah.
Fine.
And
It's
just to be clear, I want to just say this for the audience that they heard. This is not how Dr. D, as I'm going to start calling you, how you show up as a therapist. This is in your personal life.
right. Absolutely.
When you
Yeah.
come and work with Dr. D, she's not going to be like, "Well, I know more than you." So that
Right.
is, you take off the personal cap and put on the therapist cap
Or, yep.
while still being related.
That's a
Makes
great
sense.
question.
Yeah. No, yeah. And
Yeah.
thanks for answering it truthfully. And I can't wait to talk to Rob about this sometime. And then you can have him tell you something that he's afraid might be true about him.
Right. Right.
I thought for a minute you were going to say something like I'm actually a nerd because you called me a
Oh,
nerd and your husband a nerd. So I was maybe going to say
right.
like I'm secretly a nerd as well.
Oh, yeah. No, no, that wasn't it.
That's good. Well, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes. I always like
Sure.
to come back around and see if there's anything else through our conversation today that's come up for you that you'd like that's popped up for you that you'd like to share with the audience at this point that we didn't get a chance to cover.
I think I was just thinking about like my role, as a therapist, and like and like a wife and a stepmother and, like all the roles, we all play different roles, right? We're sister, whatever, brother, whatever, all those different roles we have in our life, father, mother, whatever, child. And I think that, and like sharing my journey up to this point, and why I bring this up now is because the thing that I've been working a little more aggressively, or maybe more assertively with my not aggressively, assertively with my clients over the past several few years, is that I just feel that we just have to demand more from ourselves or for ourselves. And I don't mean demand in like a negative way, like this really, over the top goals and, all these high expectations. I just feel that we have to like move the bar a little bit, set the bar a little bit higher and ask more from ourselves and from the people in our lives in ways that are productive and healthy. Because I think that by doing that, we take a greater responsibility in the direction of our life. And I think that maybe working on this startup and, really immersing myself in emotional wellness and what it means to really up our game has really affected me in ways, and wanting to help people in greater ways transform their lives and how they feel about themselves, and like how they can take more responsibility, like I said, about making changes in their life and how they're going to solve the challenges in their life. And so I think that when I think about, where I am now, all these, these years in practice and the people, I think that's one of the things that I talk to people a lot about, in session, a lot of times in therapy. How about we just demand more, right? Why don't you ask more of yourself?
Yeah.
Hold yourself accountable to those things too. And I'm not talking off the expectations of whatever. I'm talking about, like living an intentional life, right? Right. Doing things with intention and showing up and paying attention, and to like not just your relationships, but also your relationship with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about what you shared with us on your journey today, and I've got another question for you. And this is a yes or no question.
Sure.
Back when you were doing your schoolwork and you're running your coffee shop, and back then, whenever that 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe it's a little bit longer, did you ever think that a computer algorithm would spit your name out and you'd end up working at a startup?
No.
Yeah. Like I was just thinking about like the journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, even, I mean, didn't really think about algorithms or what that meant or anything. And so I find myself here.
Yeah.
And really had no, and when when I asked them how they found me, when they go into that, I was just kind of flabbergasted, right? I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, trying to wrap my brain around that, right? It's very interesting. It's been an interesting journey with them. Just really solidifying ourselves as a team and what it means to be part of a team like that, and your commitment to each other.
Yeah.
And real quickly, we met 4 out of 6 of us met each other. 5 out of 6 of us met one another for the first time 4 weeks ago.
Wow. Yeah. Talk about like modern companies, right? Like just
right. And
we've been working on this thing. Yeah.
We see each other every week on a conference call through Zoom.
Yeah.
And we finally met each other.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I have, it's probably similar to your practice. I have clients that I know extremely well. Like we've been doing coaching, like they've been a client of mine since, for almost a year now. We've never met in person, but we like spend so much time on Zoom together, and you get deep with your clients on, it's like therapy and coaching. You get all sorts of stuff that they bring you, just like they do as a therapist client relationship too. It's fascinating. So you feel like you know these people better than you know a lot of people in your life that you see every day, like in person. That's
sure. Yeah,
it's super cool.
Because after a while, especially with this team, you start to, as you're waiting for people to join, maybe they're a few minutes late, you start chit-chatting about different things. What have you been doing? Next thing you know, is 3 years later, you're talking about all the different trips, all these different things. And it's really, it's crazy wild.
Yeah, it's definitely a small. Yeah, it's finally happened where we get selected from a computer algorithm and we never have to meet anybody to become really good friends with them in person.
Yeah.
good and I think mostly good, but that's a whole another podcast episode to talk about.
Oh, sure.
Connectivity and connectedness and technology and the pros and the
Right.
cons. And I'll add that
Right.
to the list. Maybe we'll have you back on. We can have a whole conversation about that.
Well, yeah,
So,
and also
yeah.
on the startup, there's going to be a part of some of the app is on that loneliness and technology. So stay tuned.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. Well, so how can the audience find you if they want to connect with you and find out more about what you're up to, what the startup's up to? Yeah, where can we find you?
Basically, I have a website, KristinDavin.com. It's pretty basic. They can go on there. They can read what I write. They can email me or whatever. I have a phone number. They can text me. The website, I can send you the link when I think the website's up and running. And if you want to post that, terrific.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You can look for us in, I think, sometime late January for a Kickstarter. It's illumu,
Cool.
ILUMU. And so that's really the best way to find me. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram under Dr. K. Davin, Facebook fan page, the usual social media platforms.
Oh yeah, I think also you do some work with an online mental wellness platform as well, right? I think it's called Lyra.
Lyra, yes, I do. Yeah.
And so for those listening, who have Lyra as a benefit at their company, you should be able to find Kristin through there as well.
Right. Well, most of those companies with Lyra are like Facebook, Uber, Pinterest, eBay, Lululemon, Google. And there's a ton. There's a whole bunch of companies, but certainly to your point, if you go on the mental health benefits, if Lyra's with them, they'll list Lyra and then give me a ring and love to help you out. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. And we'll have to look for you by your full name, not Dr. D.
Right. Kristin.
Kristin Davin. So
right.
I want to thank you so much for being on today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I learned a lot about you today that I didn't know. Really fun to hear about your journey, where you've come from to where you are today, what you're working on with a startup, and also what you're doing in your private therapy practice. So last thing, and the tradition of the show is, I'd love it if you just leave us with a couple sentences, words of wisdom, and caveat, you've been giving us wisdom through this whole episode. Love to just leave the audience with something that they can take away and throw in a Post-it note somewhere that they can take with them. Leave us with some words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom? Like you're the only one that can make it happen, right? You're the only one that can make change. I could throw out a whole bunch of cliches, but at the end of the day, it's our responsibility to take responsibility for our life. And, just start, set small goals, decide you want to make some changes, and embrace those challenges, look for solutions, and really, really focusing on the strengths that you have, right? To push yourself forward.
Yeah.
And that's
awesome.
it. And I
awesome,
appreciate
Dr. D.
And I really, really do. I appreciate, the time and the opportunity, and let me speak about myself and my practice and what I'm up to. And I'm like I said in the beginning of the podcast, I'm super, super excited for you. And I know you're going to be a great success. It's just going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to hear the other podcasts, and be more than happy to promote all of them on my social media platforms as they come out.
Thank you. Count on it. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Kristin / Dr. D, for being on today. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I wish you the best in all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.